5.4 million registered voters casting their ballots for 12 contenders, including Incuban Alpha Condé, who controversially changed the constitution early this year to allow his name to appear on the ballot for a third term. In this edition, we will zoom in closely on the political and social issues confronting the nation. Also, we will bring you statements from some of the contenders, plus the latest updates from our correspondents and voters alike from different polling stations in the country and elsewhere in the South region. We also have with us a supporter of the main contender, one of the main candidates. We will hear from him later in the program. Amadolphus Mawula.
To conduct themselves in a peaceful and orderly manner as they exercise their democratic franchise. President Condé made the plea this afternoon after casting his ballot in Kaloum. Take a listen.
On souhaite que l'élection soit libre, démocratique et transparente et que tout se passe dans la paix et la tranquillité.
My wish is that the election is free, transparent, free and democratic, and that all this takes place in peace and tranquility. We have made sure that the polling stations are secured. Guinea cannot develop if there is no peace, security and unity. And we call on all other candidates to avoid all forms of violence. But if some want to disrupt nationally and internationally, they will be stopped. We hope that the people of Guinea will be able to express themselves freely and make their choice without any interference. That the observers play their role in all polling stations to monitor that the voting went well. I hope that ECOWAS and the African Union observers will be able to deploy throughout the country to ensure for themselves that the voting is transparent and free. I wish Guinea good luck.
That was Guinean President Alpha Condé speaking earlier today after casting his ballot in the community of Kaloum in Conakry. Meanwhile, Condé's main challenger, Cellou Dalein Diallo, has expressed confidence in winning the election. However, he warned that he will not accept results emanating from a fraudulent process. He spoke after casting his ballot in Dixon in Conakry. Take a listen.
I fulfilled this civic duty by voting with great confidence in the outcome of this election, since, as you know, I just returned from a campaign where the population reiterated and expressed their confidence and determination to provoke the alternation in my favor. I know that today there is no doubt, even in the opposition camp, that there is no doubt about the victory of the UFDG candidate. But the strategy that is being developed on the other side is how to cheat, because Mr. Alpha Condé does not want to give up his desire to grant himself another presidential mandate. So, in this regard, my voters and I will refuse fraud. This said, I appeal to all my supporters to show restraint and responsibility so that this election takes place in the best conditions. I have no doubt about the outcome of the votes, and I do not want violence to disrupt and jeopardize to some extent my victory. I have enormous concerns rather for peace and cohesion if Mr. Alpha Condé tries to seize power by trickery and violence, because at this time it will not be acceptable to my supporters, for the Guinean patriots who have all voted for the alternation.
That was President Alpha Condé's main challenger in these elections, Cellou Dalein Diallo, who was expressing his confidence in winning the polls. Now, the change of the constitution to allow Condé stand for a third term has been described by activists for democracy as a constitutional coup d'etat. What do political analysts think? We join Ibrahima Khan from the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA.
Mr. Khan, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to this live broadcast on the election already underway in Guinea.
Thank you for inviting me.
Is this democracy at play in Guinea?
Yes, let's wait and see. I think this is just the beginning of the vote. Let's see what will happen today. We saw what happened during the campaign. There was a lot of good things, but also a lot of violence. At least we have 12 candidates. They've been all allowed to go to the radio and television, talk about their program. They visited the whole country. Some were prevented from organizing campaign in some cities. It was in the northern part of the country and in the western part of the country. And let's wait and see. For me, I think election is a ritual in democracy.
Right.
So let's see, and the ritual is the whole day. For the time being, from what I heard, there is a lot of mobilization from the population. Young, old people, they all want to vote. There are some problems they're still facing, getting their voter cards and other stuff. But I think ultimately the people of Guinea will decide.
Well, the change of constitution had been viewed by the opposition and some activists as illegitimate, but Condé has insisted and maintained that it's legal because the people of Guinea, once they voted for the constitution to change the term limit, then they legitimize the process. So now that the election is contested, can an election such as this one that is in dispute produce a democratic result?
Well, if I compare with what happened in Senegal in 2012, it was the same context. Abdoulaye Wade had 2 terms. He changed the constitution. He wanted to have a 3rd term. The Senegalese people were against the 3rd term. You had the 23 Juin. People went on street and did everything. And at the end of the day, the majority of the population and even the politicians said, let's go to the vote. The people of Senegal will decide. And at that time, Abdoulaye Wade even didn't get the 3rd, of the voices of Senegalese. That the same situation may happen today in Guinea-Conakry, or even for the 2 rounds if people decide that...
Mr. Wade willingly conceded as soon as he realized that he was now winning the election. He conceded, and eventually the winner, Macky Sall, took over. Can we see that happen in Guinea in the event that Condé is on the losing side of the game?
It might happen, but let's not presume that election is decided even before the vote. In many countries in Africa, we had a surprise. You remember what happened in Malawi?
Right.
Everybody thought that the incumbent will win the election. Finally, he lost. You remember in Kenya, we ended up with, the judiciary decided to reorganize election because of the fraudulent way that the election was conducted.
Right.
So I think in Africa we have reached the stage where nobody can say before the election that election is going this way or in the other way. So let's see what the Guinean will decide. And for me, what is really encouraging today is the fact that people are going out. And usually, when people are going out, it's not for the incumbent. It's to say what they think about the future of the country. And usually, they decide by themselves.
Is the region falling apart? The aspirations of bringing countries together, of rallying, behind common goals and objectives. For example, initially they had started the debate in 2015 about having term limits, and seeing some presidents now, trying to lift the cap, trying to prolong their stays in power. What's happening to regional collaboration, especially on the democratic front?
Well, I think you heard what the president of Nigeria said during the last ECOWAS summit.
President Muhammadu Buhari.
He publicly denounced the fact that presidents want to have 3rd term. And he said we need to revise the protocol on good governance to to ensure that among the norms that will govern, democracy in West Africa will have to include 2 terms limits for everybody. And I think we are...
Is that a likely possibility?
Oh yes. This is not the first time this issue was discussed. I remember it was...
It happened in 2015, but...
2012.
Right.
2012. And the person who introduced this idea was Macky Sall. And at that time, who opposed it? It was the president of Togo, the president of the Gambia, supported by Ouattara. And now we know why Ouattara was supporting them, because he's also organizing a 3rd term. For me, the 3rd term issues, yes, it's a problem, because in democracy, we need to renew our political class. We need to think about the youth. You need to think about the future.
Right.
You've done what you can, and you have to leave the place for other people to also show that they are able and willing to do something for their country. So I personally think that the 2 terms issue will be sorted out very soon. And now, from now, ECOWAS will make sure that this problem will not continue.
How can ECOWAS prevent such changes from taking place?
ECOWAS, if for example during the December meeting, they decide that to revise the protocol on good governance and to include, because ECOWAS now, since 2016, when a decision is taken by head of state, it's the decision of the region.
Right.
You can't go back to your parliament and say the parliament will vote, and it's not going in that way. It's as soon as it's decided, it's the norm of the region.
I was having a conversation with Guniea, and he was telling me that we've come to this situation, or we've come to experience this situation where the president have had to change the constitution to stand for a 3rd term, because he didn't groom anyone to succeed him, and that's why he has been compelled to stand in this election. I mean, looking at the political class in Guinea and the people with whom the president has served over the years, what's your own assessment of why he might have entered the race?
Abdoulaye Wade is in Africa,
right,
the person who is known who has contributed to the democratization of our of the African societies.
Right.
And at the same time, he is the one before Ouattara, before all the others, who wanted to do a 3rd term. And he was prevented by the Senegalese population. I think let's also give a chance to the population to have their say on this. I'm pretty sure from what I'm seeing now from Cote d'Ivoire that it won't be easy for Ouattara to get the 3rd term. In Guinea-Conakry today, you heard that people are mobilized and they don't want. And people are learning from each other. Societies are learning from each other. The experience of Senegal can serve to Guinean
as a valuable lesson to inform their decisions.
Exactly. So I don't think that because he want to be elected, it will be very easy for him. I don't think so. And I personally believe that in West Africa, people have learned a lot of lessons. And people have started. And just to come back to ECOWAS, ECOWAS this weekend has decided to send again a ministerial mission to Cote d'Ivoire.
Right.
So it means also, even though there is a belief that ECOWAS is doing nothing, but people are talking. People are doing what they want. And I think Akufo's presidency will also be a presidency during which some of these issues will be well discussed. And because himself is against 3rd term, he will be more than willing to make sure that his name will be remembered in the region as somebody who really fought for democracy in the region. So I'm optimistic, because I believe that the population are far in advance in terms of belief than the leaders that we have.
One last question, and briefly, looking at the reforms that he initiated, did he enter this 3rd term race at least with some level of sympathy from Guineans because of the kind of initiatives that he has undertaken to develop the country.
You know, for me, the problem with Alpha Condé is that Alpha Condé believed that because he was for many, many years the leader of the opposition, when he comes to power, he can do what he wants. You know, in many countries in Africa, people create political parties not because they think that ideas about the future of the country should be discussed and people should come together to really change the country, but they create political parties because they want to be president. So the political party is not an instrument of dialogue within people who believe on issues or who want to share their views on issues, but it's just an instrument for somebody to reach, the presidency. And that is completely different from the political party we knew in the 60s. We have in the 60s. Because in the 60s, it's those political parties who helped our countries to get independence. It's those political parties within which people were discussing which type of development do we want and others. So things have completely evolved. Now you create a political party. Even in my own country, in Senegal, the current president created a political party the day he was the PDS decided that he's no longer from them. So the issue was not about ideas.
It was about having a party of his own that could launch into the presidency.
And that itself is a problem in our field. Two, we as a society also, I think we need to review the way we look our relationship with the state. The state is not a place where you eat. The state is the place where you build a country.
Right.
And all those issues need to be looked at very closely, because those who create a political party simply because they want to get position, the day they get the position is not to do better for the country, it's to do better for themselves. And we have many, many examples of that in the sub-region and even on the continent.
Well, Mr. Khan, we very much respect your opinion, and thank you very much for accepting to sit with us on this platform today to talk about the ongoing election underway in Guinea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Political analyst Mr. Ibrahima Khan, based here in Senegal, from the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA.
And we've now been joined here in our studio by Mr. Barde. His name is Alpha Amadou Barde. He's from the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea. That's the party of the main opposition challenger, Cellou Dalein Diallo. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Mr. Barde.
Thank you for inviting me. My greetings to all those people who are listening to us at the moment. And I'm very pleased to be here to exchange with you about the election in Guinea.
And we are also happy to have you here today. First off, let's begin with your feeling about not being able to vote today in these elections.
It's very sad. I feel violated, raped in my constitutional right to decide who's gonna lead my country. This is a constitutional right. It's sad,
Yes. You should be in a position to be able to vote.
Position to vote, really. And I'm not able to vote today. I'm not in a position to vote today just because one person has decided I don't have the right to vote. He don't want me to vote. This is not normal. In December we started this process of registering people for the electoral list. And because they know the opposition had win here for all the past elections.
They've won.
2010, 2013, and 2015. Mm-hmm. They decided not to register people here because we used to have around 86 to 95% here in Senegal.
How many thousand people?
We estimated the Guinean community around 2.5 million in Senegal.
Wow.
And at least 1 million voters potential voters. But what they do is usually they prevent us from being registered, and it's hard to say that we have only 30,000 people registered in Senegal, while we have more than...
And the 30,000 registered voters wouldn't be able to vote because the government made a decision that the election wouldn't go ahead here.
Yeah, usually they brought 3 to 5 machines, and each machine take around 200 people a day, and they give us only 15 days. So you know that this is done just in a way that we cannot be in the electoral list. So this time they bought 17 machines, and it was planned to take 17 days. And from the first day they stop it. And usually, you know,
what was the justification given for stopping the process?
The first thing is, you know, usually they should engage the process with the Senegalese government, writing the letters telling them that we have an election coming soon in Guinea, and in order to give the possibility to Guineans living in Senegal to vote, we need to have the authorization to go in all the country and register Guineans. So they didn't do that on time. They wait until after 1 week. So we lose 1 week in the registering process, and then they send the letters. Before they started the process without even having the authorization from the Senegalese government, and it was stopped. And people were complaining at the embassy. They can get consular card. They refused, the consulate refused to register Guineans. That was also a violation of the right of Guineans in Senegal. And also when we went there to tell them, to ask them to accelerate the process in order to help us, to give us the chance to be part of the election, and they stopped. They called the police, and the police has just come and say, everybody, you cannot be here.
Well, we can't confirm all of the things that you've said here, but we respect your opinion. Let's just look forward. What is it that your candidate, Cellou Dalein Diallo, has to offer differently from what President Condé has done or could do for Guineans?
The first thing is peace, is unity. This is what we need in Guinea. Since we have independence, and we experienced only dictatorship, because the first republic with Sékou Touré, Guineans were they didn't know anything about democracy. Around 100 to the estimation, not official estimation, it's between 150,000 to 250,000 people that were killed in Guinea, which is something very, very, very sad, very dangerous. It's you cannot imagine in a small country like Guinea, where people just want to work, to live in peace, and to have this kind of assassination. I will tell that like that, because the Camboro, many people were killed in Camboro. And everything I'm saying here is documented. I'm not telling you just because I'm in an opposition party representative here. I'm telling you what is really documented by international organization and also local organization in Guinea. So what we can offer is just to reconcile people in Guinea.
To reconcile people.
Yeah, reconcile people in Guinea, and also justice, because we need to investigate about all these crimes.
Guinea appears to be a broken society with all the ethnic tensions that have flared over the past couple of days or weeks since campaigns started across the country. How is it that Cellou can manage to bring the entire country together and make people to put aside all of the ethnic sentiments that they have against or about each other?
What I can assure you, this is just something superficial. The population in themselves, between them, is not really broken. We have a good relationship. My grandmother is coming from Mandinka community. And in my village, where I'm originated from, we've living with Mandinka people for more than 300 years. So between the population, there's not much problems, but politics came between them, and the messages, violent messages, and that have. And one of the problems we have in Guinea is more than 60% of the people did not have the chance to go to school, to being well educated.
And so illiteracy is a big problem.
Yes, a big problem, and misinformation is another big problem. And the politician use that in order to have the advantage of those population. So people usually, from those information they get from the politician, the tendency is like, okay, I'm going back to my community, in order to protect my community. So all the political leaders, this is something we cannot deny, have like a very strong tie with their origin community. So this is a reality in Guinea, but this is something caused by the illiteracy, the education, information, and the poverty also, because we have in Guinea like the highest percentage of poverty in West Africa at the moment.
Now, what do you anticipate? What do you wish to see after today's election in Guinea?
What we see, we want really to have united people in Guinea. We want them to live in peace. Mm-hmm. This is our first mission is like to reconcile everyone in Guinea, to promote peace, solidarity, and also to work together to promote the development and in order to share the prosperity of the country.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Barde. That was Alpha Amadou Barde, a representative of the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinean opposition leader Cellou Dalein Diallo, sitting with us here to talk about the ongoing election there in his country, Guinea. Unfortunately, Mr. Barde and other Guinean registered voters in Senegal could not vote because the government took a decision to suspend voting in this part of the country. You are listening to a special broadcast on West Africa Democracy Radio, and we are talking about the election underway in Guinea, where 12 contenders, including Incuban Alpha Condé, are fronting themselves to be elected by 5.4 million registered voters. And Amadolfo Smaul with me in studio.
I'm Deborah Amor.
This day, October 18, 2020. Guinea decides. This is WADR's live broadcast. Guinea decides.
Here on 94.9 FM. You might be listening to us via our website, WADR, or on Facebook. Maybe you've joined us on our live broadcast on the West Africa Democracy English service. And if you are not there, you can take a look and find out what's happening live in the studio. Now we hear from Dr. Saran Darabakaba, who was the sole female candidate in the 2010 elections that brought President Alpha Condé to power. Ms. Kaba is the former Secretary General of the Mano River Union, where she served from 2011 to 2017. The union has been very vocal about the violence in Guinea so far, and she did serve as former Minister of Social Affairs, Children and Gender Issues in 1996, and at the moment she is heading the Mano River Women's Network for Peace, MarWalkNet. Right now we're going to hear from her about how far the country has come when it comes to gender, and also why these elections are key in advancing the cause of women in the country. She also shares her thoughts about the chances the women participating in these elections have in winning.
Now Guinea has 62 years of independence. during Secretary's time, we know exactly what was the strategy for women to be part of the Congress. And it had a political will clearly demonstrated by nomination of women since now almost 40 years. We don't see progress in women. Some efforts have been done, I must be honest, because 3 years ago, for the first time in the history of Guinea, we had a minister in charge of finance who was a woman, a young woman. Minister for Agriculture, a woman. Minister for Public Works, a woman. Minister for Planning, a woman. And so on. And so that has been a kind of progress. But at the same time, you tend to see really a real debate among women groups which can influence the lobby for women achievement in the country. There are many reasons. First, the multipartyism has not brought much. When you see in isolated political parties, they are not making a space for women. And there, women are not taken really, they are not pushing. Sincerely. Second, the educational system has been part of conflict. And that is a big problem because you can't be respected as a woman. If you don't know where you want to go and how to go there. So the last 40 years, women we have been involved, we have had some progress, but at the same time, the whole issue is not handled properly. Not from the declaration, political declaration or, political debate. But just because women are not organized enough to influence the system. And that is, for me today, that is a big concern. And these elections, the coming election, for me, it will be very important. Whoever will be elected, I think that we will organize ourselves to influence so that women can be at the right place. Because the men we are fed up, really sorry for the term, I don't know the polite word in English, but we are saying enough is enough. We don't want the women to be manipulated and intimidated by men again. They are behind their egos. We are a rich country, not right. But what are we doing with the wealth God has given us for free? We have now very bright young women from the diaspora, but also from
So, Mr. Adolphus, I will call the minister now. Is that okay?
And the partners and financial, I must say, real partners can help us to be at the right place. And as yesterday, I was in a webinar yesterday, I was saying that if we want to politically to influence the system, we need money. We need money, and as the former candidate, presidential candidate, I can tell you that without money, we want to go anywhere. We need money for training, we need money for networking, we need money for moving, we need money for communication, and so on and so forth. And that we need partners, a big networking and partners to achieve our goal.
What are some of the other issues that are affecting women that need to be addressed? And do you think, some people say women know women, women understand women. Do you think it takes a woman leader to address these issues, or anybody can address them?
No. This is not to be really in your society. Depending on the way it is led, we just have their role to play. But one thing in my country which is missing now, we have intellectuals in Guniea, the ones who have been in school, who are graduated, postgraduated, who are rich. The connection between them and the women and the lower level is not evident. First. Second, the rural area and the urban area, they are not linked. And that is a big issue. And I think that the new era in our country, we need probably women to ask themselves, what are we doing? What are we doing to guide girls in school to be prepared to be autonomous?
And for the women participating in these elections as the candidates, what do you think their chances are?
So I'm not sure that it is a big chance. If they are there, they have to be prepared and they have to be willing to work. Women groups, but also younger people and men. We need men in our area.
Dr. Sarani Darabakaba, who, as I mentioned earlier, was a sole female candidate in the 2010 elections that brought President Alpha Conde to power. She's right now at the head of the Mano River Women's Network for Peace, MAWAPNET, and she was sharing there about the need for whoever wins to intervene in the gender situation in the country. But she also spent a great deal of time talking about how women in the urban and rural areas have to be connected and how unity will make a difference in gender issues across the country. And now we're going to go talk to another woman.
Right, we will now go live on the line to talk to Madam Aisha Jallo, former Minister of Education. Thank you very much and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Great. To begin with, Madam Jallo, tell us, have you already voted?
Yes, I went.
How did
9:30. It was very well. It took me 5 minutes to do it.
Oh, excellent.
Because because when I arrived, it is a school which was built when I was minister. So when I came, they saw my name and said, "Oh, this is Aisha Dakar." And they took me right in front of everybody, and I went. It was very calm, and the people were disciplined. There were rooms, one for women, one for men. And then the elderly people, they took care of the elderly people. So this is what is important here, where I have casted my vote.
Great.
Yes.
You served as Minister of Education for Guinea, and today as we speak, Guinea has one of the highest illiteracy rates across West Africa. Tell us the challenges in building illiterate society in Guinea.
What? Say it again.
What are the challenges in building a literate society in Guinea? Because it is one of the, it has one of the highest rates of illiteracy in West Africa.
Well, now we have electricity for this period. You know, I do not live here all the time.
No, I'm talking about people who have never been to school or went halfway and didn't complete, people who have no basic formal education. The population in Guinea is high. Tell us about the challenges in providing education for Guineans.
Well, first of all, you have to build classrooms, right? And you have to train teachers. In cities, you have schools. But in rural areas, even if you have schools, you have very few teachers. This is a big issue. Have to provide teachers to schools which are in rural areas. This is a big problem, one. The second problem is the parents who have not been to school do not know the benefits of education. So they do not push their children to access and stay. Some of them do access education, but they do not stay. especially girls. And this is the big problem we have. Because if you do not want the girls to stay and at least finish basic education, 10 years, you know what will happen to them? You will have early marriages, which is really a big damage.
Well,
so these are the big issues. And what is important, maybe, is to provide a budget which is adequate to the education sector.
And is that what is happening currently? How much is it that the government is allocating to education?
I don't know because I did not check yet. I'm going to meet the minister in 4 days' time. Because I have requested him to talk to him and discuss so that we will see the issues which are on board so that I can give advice. Now, this is what is important for me. Whenever I come to Guinea, I meet the ministers of education and discuss with them. I think this is my duty, not to get involved, but to give advice because I have an international overview. And they do accept it. So I will be meeting the Professor Bariban in 4 to 5 days' time, inshallah.
When you
will discuss.
When you were Minister of Education, problems that existed, for example, you talk about in order to have a literate society, you have to build classrooms, you need to recruit teachers. How, in 2020, when we are speaking now, after you've long left your post as minister, when you look back, have you seen changes in terms of the number of teachers that are in schools and the number of school buildings constructed by the government to provide education for Guinean children?
You know, do not forget, it has deteriorated. Do not forget that we have had the Ebola, you know, and then you have the COVID. All this has not promoted education, especially now, during the Ebola period. For 3 years, you know, it's because, you know, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea were victims of the Ebola. So schooling went really down. And by the time they were going to say, now we are going to start again, here the COVID came. And then people, or, you know, iPhones, or access to internet, were able to profit from distance learning or by the platforms, the digital platforms. So who was left out? It was the poor kids or parents who do not have access to electricity. Because even if you have the television, if you do not have the electricity, will you be able? Yeah, so you are, exactly. And then the rural areas, what would be maybe the best thing to do in this period of COVID is to use the radio, because 80 to 90% of the people in Africa, in fact, not in only Guinea, but in Africa, they all have a radio in the house. So if you use the radio, and if you have pictures around, they can help the kids. Otherwise, they will be left out. You know, after the COVID, what is going to happen? Many people, many kids will drop out. They will not come back. Many young girls will be married anyway. So it's really a big challenge that we have to tackle. I will discuss all this with the minister when we will meet.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Okay, Madam Aisha Bajalo, thank you very much for speaking to us here on West Africa Democracy Radio.
Thank you, it was my pleasure.
Well, that was Madam Aisha Bajalo, former Minister of Education of the Republic of Guinea, speaking there to us about the challenges in the education sector of Guinea. Joined by Dr. Alpha Barry. He's a public health specialist there in Conakry. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us on this live broadcast on West Africa Democracy Radio, Dr. Barry.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
We are doing very good, and we are glad to have you join us today.
No problem.
Great. Dr. Bari, it's been months running with campaigns up and down across the country amid a pandemic. What are the fears about what could possibly happen after all of these exercises of trying to have a new president in Guinea from the health front? What are your fears?
Excuse me, come again, please?
Campaigns took place in Guinea to elect a new president, and this was happening when the country is dealing with COVID-19. People were crowding at different locations, sometimes reportedly not observing social distancing or wearing face masks, exposing themselves to the disease. Do you have any fears about what could possibly happen in the coming days after these exercises?
Exactly. For example, let me tell you about the situation today. Today in Guinea, the community from cases, we have 11,000 cases, among which 10,000 recovery. And the cumulative death is around 17. And yesterday, the incidence was 6%. On 1,008 people tested. In regard to the election, as far as I know, the INSS, the National Health Security Agency, has contributed to secure the election process. Each political party have received 100,000 masks to be distributed to their electors. In front of each vote office, hand washing kit has been installed. But in practice, for example, where I vote, only 2 people out of 10, 2 out of 10 wore the mask. Even the agent conducting the vote did not wear the mask. Besides the kit installed at the entrance of each bureau, there is no oxygen anywhere. From the above, despite of the effort of the national agency, we are at a high level of risk of resurgence of the pandemic in Guinea. I can tell you.
Now, can Guinea cope if there are likely going to be more cases registered across the country? Are there facilities now to admit more people, just in case after these tumultuous events, more cases appear on the radar? I am asking whether Guinea will have the capacity to cater for more patients if that is the case after these exposures that people have had during the political campaigns.
No. We are really afraid of that. The consequences of this one. I'm not sure that we have the capacity to take care of those people or these refugees if we have a lot of people tested positive. I'm not sure that the government right now we have the capability. It's for that. For me, we have to, after the election, we have to have a strong committee. Hello?
Yes, hello. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the best way to avoid having so many cases is to develop a strong communication, multimedia communication, to reduce the social barriers. We have to encourage people to wear masks. But right now, in Guinea, if you take 10 persons, only 4 or 5 persons wear the mask. So it's a very risky situation we are facing right now. As an epidemiologist, I'm afraid. I'm afraid really of having this restriction from COVID-19 after the election.
Dr. Barry, my colleague Deborah Amo sitting here with me has a question for you.
So just a final question. What are you looking forward to seeing in the health sector with a new government, with a new presidency? What are you hoping will happen or will change in the health sector of Guinea after today's votes?
Okay, for me, the new president has to understand that in Guinea, like in many African countries, 70% of the population go to the health center to seek care, to seek treatment and care and everything. So they have to focus their effort to develop the health facilities, the basic health facilities, the health center. We have 410 health centers, which need to be reinforced, which need to be, the capacity has to be rebuilt more. So the new president has to think about it, because besides the help that we got from the World Bank, Guinea would have facing a big problem with this coronavirus. So the new president has to start thinking about the health facility at the federal level, at the intermediate level. Before going building the high luxurious hospital in which people cannot even have, even 1% of population will go to seek for care, you see. So for me, it's the first thing. The second thing is to reinforce the structure that train people in health, in public health, especially in health epidemiology, for example, field epidemiology or something like that. Because each time we have epidemic, that Guinea is always asking help from outside in order to come over and train people on health periphery. We have a capability, the only thing, we have structure that can do it, can do this training, but there are no support, no attention is given to them. Right. So the upcoming government have to support this structure, the local structure, training local structure in order to support this case of training.
Dr. Barry will have to cut you there. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for taking out the time to speak to us all the way from Conakry.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Very much. Thank you for everything you are doing for Africa.
Thank you, sir. That was Dr. Alpha Barry, a public health specialist from Conakry, talking to us about the health issues surrounding the country at the moment and in the near future.
And from Conakry, we head straight to Monrovia, Liberia, to speak to Habia Kaba. He's the president of the Association of Guineans residing in Liberia. Thank you very much for joining us, Kaba.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thank you too.
Great. I assume you have already voted, have you?
Yes.
Tell us about the experience. How did it go?
Okay, everything are going well. Since this morning you are here, everything are going well. And then people were here saying it's 6 o'clock and the vote started by 8 o'clock. And that time, everybody voting peacefully and no difficulty right now because most of the people are gone now. We don't have enough people who need to vote.
Okay, if I just got you clearly, since 8 a.m. Voting started and voters who turn out early morning have already voted and there are not many people still at the polling station.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. Then because people came here to vote. Some people didn't receive them ID card because we have two sets of ID card. The first ID card for the referendum and the second ID card for presidential, because the information didn't pass as well, because most of them came with the first ID card. What they receive it first, and the king and unfortunately they told them that they can use that ID card to vote.
So how many people had this experience? How many people were denied voting because they showed up at the polling center with the card that they had to vote during the referendum?
Yeah, because
I'm asking how many people didn't vote because they came with the card that was designed for the referendum?
The first registration what we did during referendum time, because and that people was 19,000 people, but our next docent only 3,900 articles. So look at the difference between 19,000 and 3,900. The difference is a lot.
Right.
And the people who came expecting to vote, because most of that people was expecting, because we have 15 countries in Liberia,
right,
and the vote was coming happen in all that countries, but unfortunately now only 3,500, and some people were expecting to do the voting in them countries. Unfortunately, the vote is not take part in that different country.
So are they staying quiet about it? What's the mood at the polling center, especially for people who came very ready to cast their votes and only to realize that they couldn't because they came with the wrong card and so they wouldn't be allowed to vote?
Okay, because we're trying to plan that things, my friend and I, we try to sensibilize the people, to leave your place at 6 o'clock and come to vote, and finally they can tell you, well, you can vote, it can help. And we're trying to convince them to bring down them heart, and they can accept, because we are here, this is our part of contribution for the development for our nation. So we're trying to convince them. And that organization, we are many people and we are different ethnic, and if like Fulani people come, we found someone, because most of them didn't go to school. Then we call one of our friends to explain to them, okay, we understand. So that is the way what we're trying to convince them.
Okay, Mr. Habib, thank you. Habib Kaba, thank you. Okay, Habib Kaba, thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Mr. Habib Kaba, President of the Association of Guineans living in Liberia. He has just been giving a summary of what transpired at the polling center there in Monrovia. About 19,000 registered voters are there in Liberia. A lot of them had turned up this morning, had appeared at the polling center to cast their ballot, but only to be told that they couldn't vote. Recall that Guinea had a referendum earlier this year, and people were issued ID cards that could facilitate their participation, and a new ID card was also issued to people to facilitate their participation in the presidential election. But unfortunately, this information, as Kaba said, did not go across, and so some people traveled to the polling center with the ID card that they had obtained to participate in the referendum, and they were denied because of that. So out of 19,000, only 3,000 people will be allowed to vote. And the time is 4 minutes after 3 p.m. You're listening to a special coverage of the election in Guinea on West Africa Democracy Radio. I'm Adolphus Mawolo.
And I'm Deborah Amour.
And we go right back to Monrovia to speak to Amadou Touré, a Guinean resident there. And good afternoon and welcome, Mr. Touré. Hello, good afternoon. I should say this is actually Sulemani Konde. Mr. Konde, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you for joining us. Have you voted already?
Yeah, I voted already.
Tell me about your experience. How long did it take for you to vote?
You know, when I came here this morning, I'm one of the poll watchers for the ruling party. So they told me to wait small because there was a long line of voters outside waiting to cast their votes. So when they told me that, I waited until when many voters cast their votes. So I went and cast my own too.
Your background seems to be noisy. If you could just walk away so that we can understand you and the listeners can also understand what you are saying. So you are still at the polling station. Tell us what's happening there currently. Are there still more people lined up in queues to vote?
Oh yes, everything is going well. Everything is going on well. So since this morning, you know, our peaceful citizens, since in the morning they behaving well. They have been behaving well up to now. So really appreciate that. We expected that from them. When they came here, they exhibited the same thing, the same behavior. So now we really appreciate them.
Okay, Mr. Sulemani Konde, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you too.
That was poll watcher and the Guinean registered voter, Sulemani Konde, speaking to us from Monrovia, Liberia, where voting is also underway for Guineans. And listeners, on that note, this is how we like to wrap it up on this second edition of our special coverage of the election in Guinea. I'm Adolphus Mawula.
And I'm Deborah Amuwa. Thank you for listening.
Today, 18th October 2020, is the D-Day in Guinea. Incumbent Alpha Conde, second re-election comes head-to-head with 11 other candidates in the big race for the nation's top seat. The judges, over 5 million registered voters, home and abroad, will decide their fates.